if there is anyone listening to this online or in this room in an abusive relationship, as a church, we would want to come alongside of you and provide safety and help guide you into a safe place. We are not in any way, shape, or form endorsing abuses. Having said that, we turn the corner to the woman's role.
Yeah, so men, called to be responsible servants. Women, what's your call? Your call is to a sanctifying respect. A sanctifying respect. Here's the way that Peter describes that in verses 1 and 2. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some of them do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. He says, listen, I want you to make sure that you hear this right. Because men are called to be subject as well. Just go back to last week, right? This is not like men are just called to this and women are just called to this. But there's a certain way in which God purposes this. He says, women, I have a purpose for you. To show a sanctifying respect to your husband in the context of your marriage. That beautifully displays the love of God's people for Jesus Christ. You notice how, as soon as we hear these things, either side, the first thing that our minds do is, well, but she, Peter takes that right out of our hands here. So that, even if some of them do not obey the word, so that, women, even if your husband is a total jerk, he's not a Christian, maybe claims to be, but he's not living like one. Maybe he doesn't even claim to be one. You're still called in that context to live with a sanctifying respect. Now it's not us saying stay in abuse, not at all. But your purpose in there, just like the husbands aren't off the hook. Paul says the same thing on the backside, right? In Ephesians. He says, you're to love your wife as Christ loved the church. Even in the context of her taking him to the cross. Men, be responsible servants in your marriage. Women, live with the sanctifying respect that God calls you to.
In ages past, opening a door for a woman was a symbol of chivalry. Now, this has nothing to do with opening a door for a woman and that's here nor there. But I sometimes use that analogy to describe the very subtle and gentle ways that a woman can affect a man and even change who he is, even without words. So I sometimes use the story of 3 types of women approaching a door with a man. So let's just assume, be with me for a moment, that a man and a woman are walking towards a door, and opening the door is an act of chivalry. So there are some women, as the man and woman approach the door, who have what I would call a natural pause. As they approach the door, they take a half step. Another half step. So that the guy, without thinking about it, without having to try to do it, just naturally shows up at the door before her. He's at the door a step ahead of her, and it becomes just natural to open the door for her. A second type doesn't have that natural pause. So as they approach the door, she and he walk to the door together, and there's this awkwardness of, okay, who's going to get it? In that situation, if the guy wanted to open the door, he'd have to work at it. He'd have to try it. He'd have to think ahead of time, I'm going to put the extra effort in to get to the door sooner, because it doesn't just happen naturally in the flow. Or a third type, there are women who have a mindset, no one's going to open the door for me. I can get my own, thank you very much. And that's That's a woman who, if the guy even is trying, he takes an extra half step, she takes an extra half step. He takes an extra half step, she takes 3/4 of a step. Like she is there to fight against that door being opened for her. I only share that analogy because this text talks about this hidden beauty. In fact, let's go back to verse 4 through 6. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with an imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. So that silent influence to bring out godliness in a man, God considers that a very precious thing. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Now, if Sarah was in this room and we asked her about Abraham, she might say, so Abraham, I know you think a lot of Abraham, but Abraham had a lot of flaws. Abraham was not a perfect person towards me as a wife. And so I had to learn how to love him well, to make him a better man than he could ever dream of being, because I was there at his side. I had to learn how to love him well, to bring about a godliness and a trust in him. There is a beauty of a type of behavior in a woman that can bring out good in men around her with gentleness and with quietness.
Thanks so much for listening. We pray that God touched your heart in that. And we know that he is faithful in using his word through the power of his spirit to grab hold of us. So we pray that God had a word for you there and that you step forward in faith in what he has for you.
One of our prayers for all sermons is that if you hear something specifically from John or I, just us, may that decrease, may you ignore it. Our prayer is you'd hear God's voice in his word. He genuinely is speaking. And if you'd like more of the sermon, follow the link below. It will take you to the full cut of the sermon. And with that, we say, God bless you.